are Tyrians. We are many races, several professions. We practice the arts of combat as well as healing. We have foes, and we fight them without mercy. And it's time for us to claim back what is ours. It's time for us to claim back Tyria from the terror of the Elder Dragons. We can't go on living our lives in fear. We have to fight. We have to make a stand. This is our story.
I'd like to welcome everybody to our Charr Redux MiniCast. I will be your host, Lag, along with Naveen, who is also here.
Hello.
And this is going to be kind of something different than what we've been doing. We just didn't get to cover all of the Charr lore that we wanted to in our Charr episode, and admittedly, we didn't have everything in front of us, and we wanted to get the episode out on schedule. Well, maybe we should have waited, but this is going to be our kind of true-up of that episode. We're going to talk about the things we feel like that we really wanted to focus on, but we didn't have time to. To start it off, though, we did get a bunch of questions, and we didn't get to answer as many as we wanted to because we were too busy interviewing Bridger, which we hope, if you haven't seen that episode...
Oh, you gotta listen.
You gotta go listen to that because that's a good time.
Bridger is hilarious.
Yes, he is great, and I'm hoping in the future, once things get going, maybe we can have him back and do kind of I don't know what we'll talk about, but have him back just to talk about whatever.
Yep.
So how are you doing, Naveen?
I'm doing good. I'm so excited for the next BWE3, and I am ecstatic that ArenaNet actually sent us keys for the next beta weekend. We're actually having a contest right now. It's ending on Saturday. So if you guys want to head over to chroniclesoftyria.com, all the details are on there. It's actually pretty easy. It's just all you need is like word paint or whatever. It's just for you to caption screenshots that we've taken in game, and you can get your chance on having a beta key. So if you have friends that didn't try out the game yet and they didn't buy it or anything, well, I mean, if you win a key, you can play with them. So
Yeah, we have 25 keys
Yep.
that we are giving away, so go over and check that out if you're interested. Naveen's pretty self-centered because they're all pictures that she took and they're all of her, but whatever, that's
Come
fine.
on now.
Anyway, it's not like we and the rest of the community haven't taken any, but whatever, it's fine.
Meanie.
So, alright, so questions. Right, so we answered some with Bridger, and some we've answered via email or on our forums, which we did set up at community, or the podcast section on the forums, where if you're not comfortable sending us an email for whatever reason, you can go there and post questions if you're a member of our forums. So feel free to do that. But let's get this started. So we have a question. We have actually a couple questions from Opera. He asks, what do you think it will take to break Jormag's tooth? In Edge of Destiny, we see Air have a pretty good go. Do you think we'll take some magic or device rather than Norn strength, perhaps?
Me, I think it would take the death of Jormag. It's just a theory. Because I don't know. I mean, everyone tried their game on Jormag's tooth, and none of them even chipped anything out of it. I'm pretty sure it's not still alive, but I don't know. That's my theory. When Jormag dies, or when we defeat him, or even maybe just weaken him, maybe we'll be able to do that.
Well, my thoughts on this are, because the lore behind it is when the tooth of Jormag is broken, that's the Norn sign that it's time to bring the fight to Jormag and take back the Far Shiver Peaks. That at some point in game, when we're able to go to that area, or an expansion or whatever it is where we can fight Jormag, maybe that's when we'll fight whatever the new or the champion of Jormag is, And maybe when we defeat the champion, then we'll be able to break the tooth, and that'll be like in the expansion when we're going to go fight Jormag.
Ah,
I don't
yeah.
know.
Well, I mean, your theory is better than mine because it would have more story to it than just, hey, we defeated Jormag. Here's a tooth. Chip it up.
Yeah, and in Edge of Destiny, Opera mentions that Air gives it a pretty good go, and I believe it's been a while since I read it that Ritlock thinks that his sword will be able to break it, and if you don't know, he has, I think it's Soathin. I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's Prince Rurik's sword
Hmm.
from Guild Wars 1. It's not clear how he has that sword, but it is that same sword.
I haven't read Edge of Destiny yet, um, so I wouldn't be able to tell you. They don't explain it,
Uh,
how he got
I
the sword?
I believe Logan asks him, and it's unclear, and he doesn't want to tell him.
Oh, okay.
My theory is that he just found it, like it was on the ground somewhere, and he just picked it up,
Yeah,
and he was
because
like
no one retrieved Rurik's
from
body, anyways.
from Hell's Precipice.
Hmm.
So, but that sword, unlike all of the, at least we're led to believe, unlike all the other fiery dragon swords that you can either get or see in Guild Wars 1,
Hmm.
his is a special one, obviously has a name, but it was a sword that was forged in the city of Or, but it was forged prior to the gods actually leaving Tyria.
Oh, yeah?
So, yeah, so it's an old, old sword. So maybe that's why Ritlock felt that he could do it. I mean, he didn't do it because he didn't feel like, I don't know, I forget if he said he wasn't ready or he didn't want to take that from a Norn
Hmm.
or whatever. But maybe that means some ancient weapon. And I don't know who it was said to who had forged this. I don't know if it was forged by one of the gods or whatever.
Hmm.
But maybe some ancient weapon of some kind will be what we need to actually crack the tooth in the end. Maybe if we beat Zaitan, or when we beat Zaitan in Guild Wars 1, we'll find some other weird relic in, the city of Or when we're there,
Hmm.
and that'll be used in the expansion to break the tooth.
Hmm. But that sword has a twin, right?
Yes, which is King Adalbern's sword,
Yeah.
Magdir, which is, I think, still in Ascalon City,
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
but I'm not sure. And it's all part of the lore where where the faux fire happened, which
Right.
we just were reading about today, that it's not really conclusive exactly what caused the faux fire.
Hmm.
The humans have their belief, which is when the Imperator of the Flame Legion, who doesn't have a name because it was stricken from the record, he was attacking Ascalon City, and he had the Claw of the Khan-Ur, which we'll talk about more later. It's a very important Charr artifact, and we'll talk about why he was bringing it there to fight. But the humans believe that when those two weapons clashed, that caused the faux fire.
Hmm.
The Charr believe that King Adalbern realized that he couldn't win, and he smashed Magdir, and that caused the faux fire. And the intro video to the Ascalonian Catacombs, Ritlock says the same thing. And there's some stuff in Ghosts of Ascalon that may lead you to believe one way or another, but we don't want to spoil that. So you should check that book out. It is very good, and in rereading it myself, if you're kind of iffy on some of the lore or what's going on, right in the beginning when a lot of the characters are getting introduced to one another, they pretty much tell the tale of their race.
Yeah.
So, it's 2 or 3 pages, and I mean, this was written by Jeff Grubb was one of the writers. So he's one of the lore experts helped write this book.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it's not like, it is canon. The story is to be taken as canon, and it's written by one of the lore masters, so it's worth checking out. Alright, so for those of you who are also wondering, Dint isn't with us tonight because we mentioned he'd been dealing with some technical difficulties in the past. Well, he is upgrading himself to a new laptop to prevent any of that kind of stuff from happening in the future. So hopefully next week on Monday, when we record our human lore piece and do our interview with Alucard Alina from Project Tyria, he'll be back with us. But Naveen had to step away, so I'm going to continue on here. So next question from Opera is, We've seen the Shatterer and Zaitan's champion, but has Jormag's current champion been revealed? My impression is that Jormag will be featured in an expansion more prominently. I'm going to have to agree with you on being featured more in an expansion. I imagine, I don't know if they're going to do 4 expansions, 1 per dragon. That could maybe get old. Maybe we get 2 in 1 if they're somewhat nearby. But I'm not really sure what his second champion is. I know Naveen had said she was talking about there was a time where ArenaNet people were saying, "Oh, it was Jormag under Drakkar Lake in Eye of the North," which made sense because that was what was supposed to have whispered to Svanir to turn him into the Nornbear. But then they were saying, "No, that's not Jormag. It's some other thing." So people were calling it Drakkar instead. And I believe it's Swedish, but Drakkar means dragon. I think it's Swedish, but I could be wrong. But it means dragon in some kind of Icelandic, Nordish language. But then I think they flipped back, and now they're saying, no, it was Jormag, definitely. So I don't know which it is, but I don't think we know what his current champion is. So I guess we'll just have to wait and find out. Maybe there'll be a reference to him, or we'll see part of him in Guild Wars 2. If not, we'll have to wait till an expansion. So I think Naveen might be back.
I am.
Okay, so we're on to Opera's last question here.
Oh, okay.
So he says, finally we have seen some of the dungeons reveals, such as the Ascalon Catacombs and the mansion in Beetleton. Do we know what Air's story dungeon / the Norn dungeon is, or what it might be?
Well, Lagwyn posted a video in the forums, and I'll put a link. I'll put a link to it in our comment section, so that you can check it out. But basically, you get to know that Air.
It's Air.
Air? Alright.
Yeah.
Now I'll pronounce it properly from now on. Well, basically, she stirred up the ghosts in the dungeon, and you have to go in, and, that scene is with Ritlock, basically. So he doesn't like that she's in there, so you have to go in the catacombs with her. But...
yeah.
That's it. But
yeah.
when you see the video, you'll basically that sums it up. But
yeah, I know. I think it was actually Opera followed up with this and then posted a list of other dungeons that he found. Right. Yeah, so we can post the link to that forum post in our descriptions as well, so you can kind of see some of the other dungeons that he's found. And a couple of our other forum members commented little tidbits of information and more about that.
Right, and he found a bunch, actually.
Yeah, it looks like, I can't remember the exact number, but I think there was at least 8.
Wow.
So...
and I haven't been to one.
Well, maybe this beta weekend, if characters aren't wiped,
yay,
we'll be high enough level to go to Ascalon Catacombs.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to work on my character if she isn't wiped, because I already want to play Nasura.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely going to do that. But if I can, I think I'd only have to get 2 levels.
Right.
And then I could do it, so.
Nice.
But thank you, Opera. That was Opera's questions. We're going to move on to Erica Franz from YouTube.
I think it's Franz.
Okay, well, we'll go with Franz for now. If it's Franz, sorry.
Yeah.
I was just going with Franz because Franz, whatever, it doesn't matter. Anyway. Erica, right. Erica from YouTube. She asked us, I was under the impression the dwarves were not... This is in reference to our Asura video.
Mm-hmm.
I was under the impression the dwarves were not driven to the surface, along with the Asura and the Skrit, by the Great Destroyer because they already had settlements in the Shiver Peaks and Prophecies. But I'm pretty new to lore, so I'm wondering, did they also have underground settlements that were driving up later in Eye of the North? The answer is yes, they did have settlements in the Shiver Peaks and Prophecies. There were quite a few all throughout northern Shiver Peaks, and even in some of the southern Shiver Peaks down by Naveen's favorite Thunderhead Keep. Um,
How many
but
times have I done that mission?
way too many. But if you recall in our Asura video, the Asura were underground for thousands of years, unbeknownst to any of the humans on Tyria.
Mhm.
But they did interact with other underground races like the dwarves and the Skrit. So that meant that the dwarves had to have underground settlements. And there's lots of all the different dungeons and things you go into, or a majority of the dungeons, or the depths of Tyria in either north are underground dwarven settlements.
Yeah,
So
plus,
yes,
oh, I'm
go ahead.
sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
But plus, when you do a dungeon underground, you have the Deldrimor Light, right? And that's to gain dwarven points.
Hmm.
So, yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
and there's the beacons of Draknar,
Hmm.
which are the resurrection shrines, and the light of the great dwarf, or whatever it is.
Yeah,
That skill that unveils, hidden things, but it also can sometimes find you dwarven ghost allies to come fight with you.
yeah.
So, yes, there were above ground settlements, but yes, they also had underground ones as well. And I think what it was with the destroyers, it was pushing the Asura from their locations into the dwarven areas, because I think that's actually what happens in the very first, like when you're going to Eye of the North.
Yeah, when you're entering the fissure.
Yeah, you meet
Vec.
Ogden and Vec. Yeah.
Hmm.
So her last question is, the Norn are definitely my top race, and a lot of that had to do with Air being quite awesome. You did mention, I think, that Logan was the leader, if there is one, of Destiny's Edge. I always felt that Air was the leader.
Well, she was at some point,
She
but
was, totally. I was just wrong. It's too many years, 7 years of playing a human character, and all my human pride just assumed that Logan Thackeray would be the leader. But again, I haven't read Destiny's Edge in a while, or Edge of Destiny rather. But yes, Air was the leader of Destiny's Edge. No buts about it. Sorry to all the Norn Air fans out there for making that mistake.
I always get confused. Destiny's Edge, Edge of Destiny.
Yeah, they couldn't have just named them both the same thing.
Yeah, I don't know why. They make confused people.
Yeah. And our final question is from Zoo Zebra. This is more game mechanics, but anyway, Sylvari's cycles are said to affect their personalities, and Guild Wars 2 has a personality system, so do you think the Sylvari cycle will affect their dialogue choices, and how will people talk to them? Or and how people talk to them?
Yes.
Yeah, basically. Naveen and I had this discussion that the last decision you make in any of the character creation options seem to not have a ton of influence, but it really depends on which race you choose. Because for the Charr, it's what legion are you in, which obviously affects your story quite a bit, and some of your elite skills and things like that. The Norn is which spirit I think it's which spirit you favor more than the other out of all four spirits of the wild, which I don't know if that actually plays in. I never really played a Norn, so I can't really chime in
Yeah, me neither.
if that plays one way or another. I can tell you, for playing a human for 28 levels, which god of the 6 gods blessed you doesn't seem to make a difference at all. At least in the first 28 levels, in the first 20 levels of story content, because that never comes up. You can go to any one of the little people that's represents one of the gods to get you the speed boost in Divinity's Reach. Doesn't matter which god you go to, even if it's not yours. It doesn't matter what response you give them, charm, dignity, or ferocity. They still give you the speed boost. So I don't know.
Me neither.
I think the dwarf or the Asura is who was your master, like that when you were still an apprentice, which we don't know. And the Sylvari is what cycle of day were you born in, which again we don't know. But I would have to think that one seems more significant. So I would think that yes, it would give you're going to get different dialogue options at some point. But as for when, I don't know.
There's also the thing that contributes to that, where for your dialogue where you can be fierce or use your charm
Hmm.
or can't remember what the other attributes are. But I mean, if those mix in with like how which cycle you were born in, I mean, you're gonna have a lot of different dialogues options.
Yeah.
That's crazy. If it happens, I mean, they
Hmm.
really went in depth with that.
Oh yeah. So that sums up our community little question and answer session that we had.
Hmm.
So I think we're gonna move into the our Charr lore piece, a little Redux Charr lore. So first, we're gonna start off by talking about the legions because we really didn't go too much into the four legions, and I mean, we don't have a ton of information on them, but we feel we needed to call them out a little more specifically than we did last time.
Hmm. Yeah, because we didn't really elaborate on them. So I felt that we missed out on that. So,
Yeah, Naveen, do you want to start or you want me to?
oh, go ahead.
Okay, so I'll start with the Ash Legion because I have the least amount of information for them. Um, as far as pretty much everything that I get from making an Ash Legion character in making a Charr character is pretty much all I could find on the Ash Legion. They're known for their spies, their assassins, any kind of person that stays to the shadows. They're not upfront fighters like the Blood Legion. They don't use technology and all sorts of stuff like that, like the Iron Legion do to do all their fighting. Um, we actually don't even know currently where their main like stronghold base is. Like we know the Iron Legion is the Black Citadel.
Hmm.
We don't know anything about the Ash Legion homeland.
Hmm.
We know the Imperator of the Ash Legion is Malice Sword Shadow, but outside of her name and rank, we don't really know much about her other than she helped in some fashion towards the treaty between the Charr and the humans.
Right.
I think it was mentioned somewhere that she sent some troops, but somebody was like, what she knew they sent aid, but it was more her troops were actually spying on the other Imperators under the guise of helping people out.
Hmm.
But really, that's all we got on the Ash Legion.
Hmm. Yeah, there's not much details about the legions.
No. Well, I do. I had the Iron Legion as well, which I have a little more detail about because you start in the Black Citadel as a Charr,
Hmm.
which is the Iron Legion stronghold. So there's a
Huh.
little bit more about that. So, yeah.
Well, I could go with the Blood Legion next, since
Hmm.
there isn't that much
Okay.
information either.
Sure.
Well, basically, the Blood Legion are the front line, so they're known for their prowess in traditional battlefield combat. The Imperator was Bangar Runebringer, and that for me is a little bit of a tongue twister. Bangar Runebringer.
Hmm.
And actually, Ritlock Brimstone is a tribune in the Blood Legion.
Okay.
They're powerful, they're bold, they love to fight, they live in the fields of war, and they die fighting. They're soldiers. They face their enemy head on. So basically, I mean, they want to fight, they want to win. They're really aggressive. They don't stop fighting until everything called an enemy is dead and that the last ones are standing. I mean, needless to say, the Blood Legion is extremely courageous and they're born for battle. But that's about it. I mean, I didn't really find any other information aside from their Imperator and the Tribune being Ritlock.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Okay.
they're on the front line. If you
Yeah.
want to be a warrior or a guardian, a Blood Legion would be a smart decision for you.
Yeah. I
If you're
mean,
into the lore and you want to continue on with the storyline, Yeah.
mhm. Yeah. So I guess I'll take the Iron Legion now.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like I kind of mentioned, they're all about technology and mechanical, all sorts of inner workings. So they don't tend to fight on the front lines or sneak around in the shadows. They'd rather overwhelm their opponents with siege devourers or big siege towers or siege weapons.
Those were fun.
Yeah. So they live in the Black Citadel. That's their main stronghold. So that we know more about that than the other two areas. And they kind of hold control over more all of old Ascalon, the stuff we're used to when we think of Ascalon in Guild Wars 1. They hold that area. What I found that was kind of interesting is the Iron Legion helped pioneer the development of the engineer profession.
Oh yeah.
So possibly, if the Iron Legion didn't exist, there wouldn't be an engineer profession at all.
Huh. Would it safe to say that someone from the Iron Legion helped to, do all the clockwork because they're recognized for their clockworks?
I would imagine. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Imperator because I have more information about him because of the kind of, since he's a little more well known. It is Smoder the Unflinching. So he's an old, veteran soldier. He's, but for being an older Charr, he's, strong and muscular. He's covered in scars. He only has one eye.
Jeez.
He's an engineer, but he's also a designer and an architect. And a lot of the big advancements that have, bolstered the Iron Legion's strength are all because of his work. And one of the things is because of he's this kind of has this feeling that, and this thought process that the Iron Legion is kind of a forward-thinking legion, where they don't kind of tend to live in the tradition. They're all about thinking big picture, going forward. And it's because of this progressive nature that other races are allowed in the Black Citadel. And I mean, if you play Guild Wars 2, you'll see, humans and Norn and presumably Charr or Asura and Sylvari, down the road.
Right.
So I think that's pretty much all I have on him. I know I have some other cool things about him, but we'll talk about that more when we get kind of into when I talk about the Claw of the Con-ur.
Oh, okay.
So, Naveen, you want to talk about the Flame Legion?
Yes.
The evil Charr?
They're not evil. They're
Well,
just mean.
Okay, well, they're the evil group in the Charr community, so...
Yeah, they are evil.
Yeah.
They're known as the Gold Legion also. That's a nickname that the other legions give them because gold metal is so weak and because gold was used in the shamans' rituals to the Titans. The Flame Legion is known for their magic uses, and they were overthrown and cast down after the fall of the Titans. And Kala Scorchrazor's rebellion, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. Being overpowered by the other legions, the Flame Legion retreated to the northeast to their primary citadel and this is a very complicated word for me to say. That's Hrnangmer. That's Hrangmir. Hrangmir.
That's a mouthful.
I guess if you're a kitty, it's easy.
Yeah.
But in Guild Wars 1, the Flame Legion, they used the Titans as their gods and to subjugate the other legions. Then the Shaman caste formed and ruled over the Charr. They're responsible for the searing, and they also moved to retake Ascalon and invaded Or and Kryta for a short while. They were stopped by two events, though. The rise of the White Mantle in Kryta and the destruction of Or by Vizier Kilbron. That's all in Guild Wars 1. The Flame Legion's dominance in Ascalon continued for 2 years, lasting until the defeat of the Titans. Pardon. But after Abaddon was defeated, the Titans they were destroyed along with the ability to influence the Charr. So, the Titans gone, the Shamans turned to worship the Destroyers, the minions of Primordus, But later on, the Fierce Warband and Pyre Fierce that's Pyre Fierce
Shot.
Fierce Shots Warband.
Uh-huh.
They succeeded in assassinating several leaders of the Shaman caste, and they reduced the Flame Legion's rule to little to nothing. So the Flame Legion's control was finally shattered at the final battle on the plains of Golgahine. Golgahine? I get all the cool names.
Uh-huh. That's right.
But those who remain there, they fled into Blaze Ridge Mountains, and eventually they had returned to the northern Ascalon. The Flame Legion is evil. No one likes them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's for the story about them. Basically, they're more, they use magic most often, and that's why there's a lot of shamans in the Flame Legion.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, that's a little bit of history for the Flame Legion there.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you for that. And I think next up on the list, we're going to go with which ties into the Flame Legion pretty heavily, is that, the oppression of the female Charr and then their eventual rebellion to the point where here we are in Guild Wars 2, where they are prominent in the society. And in Guild Wars 1, you never saw a female Charr at all.
No, you never saw a female, and it's important to know that there was no art concept for female Charr in Guild Wars 1. All the Charr were male. They never even drew a female one. And it's an artist. Her name was Kristen Perry. There you go.
She's huge in the art. She was one of the people cast by Rhys Sosby to do the total redesign of the Sylvari.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
She's one of the big, like Jeff Grubb, Rhys Sosby are to lore as Kristen Perry is to art.
Oh, well, there you go.
A little analogy for you. How about that?
Huh, I learn something new every day.
Uh-huh. I try to keep you educated,
Thank you, Lagwyn.
Mm-hmm.
But she actually volunteered, though, to craft them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's about it for the Guild Wars 1 fact of why there was no female. But not many know this, but there was a female Charr rebellion between Guild Wars 1 and Guild Wars 2, and you can read about it in Ghost of Ascalon.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a little bit of history on how that happened. There's a warband in the Flame Legion who went to the Charr with new gods to worship, the Titans. And we talked about that during the Charr lore episode, the first one. The other legions didn't really want to join them, but the Flame Legion convinced them, often by force, so successfully that the Charr were convinced that they did not have that they did have gods to help them. It was the Titans that gave the Charr the cauldron that would help them breach the wall. And here's another cool word for me to say: Bethia Havoc Bringer. She's a female Charr of the Blood Legion. She didn't trust the followers, and she swore never to bow down to anyone or any gods for that matter. And she was able to gather a few followers of her own. And because of this, the shamans, one night they took her and they made a blood sacrifice of her to their new gods. They declared her a traitor and accused her of using her sexuality to tempt the males from the true path of the gods. To prevent this from ever happening again, they marked all the females with the same brand of deceit, and they banned them from serving in legions, where they would be mixed with all the other males. So, because they were branded, they could easily tell the males from the females apart. The shamans would give more blood sacrifice to their new gods because more Charr, females and males alike, didn't agree with them. After a few more sacrifices, well, most of them saw no choice but to submit to their new gods. So the Charr lived like this for centuries. Sometime after the Searing, more specifically in Eye of the North, you play through it, Pyre Fierce Shot
Mm-hmm.
helped the Charr to face the Flame Legion, along with our heroes. But they did not triumph until his granddaughter, Calla Scorch Razor, she led a rebellion that restored female Charr from their rightful place. There's a lot of female Charrs and some males as well sided with her. Before she entered the rebellion, a lot of Charrs had counted themselves in for an eventual rebellion against the Flame Legion, following in Pyrephirsas. I
Just
swear to
call him
God.
Pyre.
Pyre.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. In his tracks. But many males, they didn't think it was a good idea for females to be part of this rebellion. So, because they were lacking battle skills, because they had stayed home for so many years, little did they know that some female Charr were training in secret. So, to counter this argument, Calla threw down the challenge, and the Imperator of the Iron Legion, Forge Iron Strike, he agreed to meet her in single combat. If she could defeat him, then she would make it clear that females have right to be deemed soldiers. And if she would lose, well, he would kill her as an example to the other females. So the battle took place in the ruins of Rin, the old human capital of Ascalon, which is now the Black Citadel.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of Charr that witnessed this fight, and there were from imperators to the lowest of gladiums. So the battle was so intense, but in the end, Scorch Razor won, but she did not kill Iron Strike. She forced his surrender from him, and he honored the terms of their deal. He agreed to fight alongside her and welcomed the female Charrs as well. Even the shaman from the Blood, Ash, and Iron Legion followed. The Flame Legions met the other three, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
in the plains of Golgahine, and because the Flame Legion told female Charrs to stay behind, they were so outnumbered that they surrendered rather than be slaughtered. But when the Flame Legion's Imperator met with her, he was so ashamed that he stabbed her with a poison dagger. His treachery cost Calla's life, but her last words were, "At least I died knowing my sisters are free." And Iron Strike throated the killer on the spot. But
Nice.
from that day, yeah, very nice.
Mm-hmm.
From that day now, the female Charr stood strong and proud, and that's what the female Charr's rebellion looked like. So that's why there are females all around. Now you can create females and males alike in Guild Wars 2. And that's why you did not see any females in Guild Wars 1. They were locked up in
In
their
the kitchen
houses,
making sandwiches.
making Moa jerky.
Yeah, because that wouldn't really be sandwiches because Charr don't eat. They only eat meat.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you for that,
You're
Naveen.
welcome for that little piece of history.
Uh-huh. Next up, I'm going to talk about the government and the ranking system. And I know we got a couple of comments on our horrible depiction of trying to figure out how the Charr ranking system works. Where we're like, oh, there's Centurion. Where does that go? And fixing up
Is it Gladium? Gladium? I'm
oh,
not sure.
yeah, I know. Yeah. Okay. So let's get into this.
Sorry.
That's okay. Right. So the true head of all the Charr nations is the Khan-Ur. It's also sometimes called the Primus Imperator. And whoever the Khan-Ur is, they outrank the four. There's the four legions, and they have an Imperator at the head of each legion.
Okay.
The Khan-Ur rules over all of them, and he can command the four Imperators to do what he wants. The last known Khan-Ur was assassinated when the humans arrived in in Tyria in the first place, and this kind of happened when they drove the Charr out of Ascalon. So the Khan-Ur had this weapon which was called the Claw of the Con-Ur, and they kind of describe it a little bit, but all I can think of is a Klingon bat'leth is all I think of when I think of this weapon. I don't know if that's even close to what it is, but that's what I picture. So, to become a Con-Ur, you had to have this weapon in your possession and perform some act of great power with it to show that you were worthy to wield it. And if you did that, then you're considered a Con-Ur and you would rule over all of the Charr. So the claw got lost during the faux fire, which we mentioned, and it was kind of held by that Imperator of the Flame Legion, who we don't know his name because it was stricken from the record. But he had this because he was going to try to defeat King Adalbern and take Ascalon back, and that was his plan for his show of great power.
Mm-hmm.
And in the process, he was defeated. And whether or not it was the two weapons clashing, or Adalbern just giving in and killing them all by smashing Magdir, we don't know. Well, like I said, read Ghosts of Ascalon. So the claw remained in Ascalon City until the Vigil. They sent in a team to retrieve the claw because they were going to use that as a peace offering. The Vigil and the humans were going to give this to the Charr as a peace offering to stop all the fighting between Ebonhawk and the Black Citadel and everything. Mm-hmm. And again, the whole journey to get the claw is pretty much the driving factor of Ghosts of Ascalon.
Dun, dun, dun.
Right. So, obviously, if you know anything about Guild Wars 2, you know that this happened because Charr and humans are together, they're working together. You can go to and from the Black Citadel, Divinity's Reach is a Charr, whatever, and it's not a big deal.
Mm.
So there was that guy, Smoter, whatever his name was, Unflinching, the Imperator of the Iron Legion. The group went into Ascalon City, they got the claw, gave it to this guy, and that made the truce between the Charr and the humans.
Mm.
And if you actually go into the Imperator's core in the Black Citadel, you can see the claw hanging, in his office.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I'd never done it because I didn't know it was there, but it's there.
Well, we have so much to do in BW Theory.
I know. So, like we said, underneath the Con-Ur are the Imperators, which there are 4, one for each legion.
Mm-hmm.
And, they command all aspects of the legion. And because there is no Con-Ur to unite them all, each legion works independently. And which I found out today, that the only way you can become an Imperator is you have to be in some way a descendant of the Con-Ur, the most recent Con-Ur.
Mm-hmm.
And only Imperators can become a Con-Ur. So not any Joe Schmo Charr can't just be like, I've got the claw, I'm going to be the Con-Ur. No.
You have to be an Imperator.
And have the Con-Ur and have the claw and perform some great act of power to get it.
Wow.
Right? So it's no simple process.
So basically what they're saying is that you can't, even in the slightest dream, be a Con-Ur in Guild Wars 2.
Yeah, unless somehow you're related. I mean, you know what your father is. That's one of the choices you make as a Charr.
Mm.
So I don't know if maybe you got switched at birth and you're actually related to Con-Ur. I don't know.
Maybe.
But so Imperators, they command the Tribunes. And the Tribunes are the primary commanders for the Imperator. One legion rarely has more than 10 Tribunes, and like we mentioned, I think we mentioned before, but we definitely didn't know last time, Ritlock is a Tribune. If you watched a video of the Races of Tyria, the Synergetics fiasco,
Synergetics.
Yeah, he says, rank Tribune right at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So we should have known that because we just talked about it prior on the Asura episode, but anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Ritlock's a Tribune.
Yeah, I think I said it before.
Yeah, so Tribunes command Centurions, and each Centurion commands a number of warbands. So they call this grouping when you command like 2 or 3 or 4 warbands. That's a company. And the Centurion coordinates all the maneuvers on kind of a big scale within, but it's still underneath the Tribune's authority. So they command, these multiple warbands. In an area where you have multiple Centurions, they pick a Primus Centurion, and the Primus Centurion leads an assault force of 3 to 5 companies. And remember, each company is comprised of multiple warbands. So this number is smaller than the total number that a Tribune oversees, but it's still, a pretty massive size group.
Right.
And that's pretty much it for the Charr chain of command as in actual active military ranks.
Mm-hmm.
And anything less, there are other ranks, and I'll describe them now, but as far as, high-ranking military officials, that's it. It goes Conur, Imperator, Tribune, Centurion. And that's that. So these ones that kind of don't really fit into anything is there's a brevet, they call it, and that's a temporary field commander that's only used in cases of emergency. So, I don't know, I guess if, let's say, you're out on the field and, there's a company commanded by a Centurion, like we said, and the Centurion is slain. Well, now there's no Centurion, so they just pick somebody and they go, hey, you're the brevet, you're now in charge till we get a new Centurion. Don't screw it up. They also have we think it's pronounced Quaestor or Quaestar. This is a quartermaster of the Charr. This is basically when a Charr gets too old to actively be on the battlefield and fight, they kind of give them this title. And it's basically because they have so much knowledge and battle prowess and experience that their guidance is still really valuable. Mm-hmm. So they give them this position, and they kind of train and teach some of the other, the soldiers, and are there as kind of like consultants for, battle strategy and that kind of a thing. Yeah, which is pretty cool. Mm-hmm. So there's a term scrapper. This is a catch-all term for if ever a warband gets into trouble and they're on like punishment duty, they're all called scrappers.
Oh yeah.
Regardless of whatever their rank actually is, they're a scrapper. That's like, go pick up the junk, go do this, go farm or whatever,
Go feed some potatoes.
Exactly. Primus is a title given to the instructor in the Farrar. So when cubs are born, they're brought to the Farrar and they're educated. They're put in their first warband. And the Primus is kind of like your teacher when you're like a little kid in elementary school.
Right.
So he kind of gives them guidance and educates them and basically teaches them, prepares them for a life as a soldier in whatever legion they're in. So if they're in the Blood Legion, he teaches them all about, like fighting and frontline tactics. And if he's Iron Legion, he teaches them all about how to work on siege weapons and things like that. Mm-hmm. We mentioned the Gladiums last time, and that is the lowest of the low rank on the Charr scale. So the Gladium is a Charr without any warband whatsoever. They're not respected. Even doesn't matter if even if you were, say, a Centurion or a Tribune, and you all of a sudden become a Gladium, well, you're still a Gladium, and they all look down on you. They don't trust you, and the reason that they don't trust you and they look down on you is because your warband is your family. Whatever you did or didn't do allowed your entire family to die. So you're not trusted. So I know there's Almora Soulkeeper, who's the founder of the Vigil. She was a Gladium.
Oh, she was?
Yes. And the reason she was a Gladium is because she was on the front lines when Kralkatorrik woke up and flew south, creating the Dragon Brand. And her entire warband and the whole company and everybody she was with were all instantly turned into corrupted by Kralkatorrik flying over. And for some reason, she was the only one who wasn't.
Oh yeah, I remember reading this, but I didn't know that she was a Gladium.
Because her entire warband died, she was a Gladium. Hers is a
Yes.
shitty situation because it was totally out of her control. Like, he didn't even attack them. He just flew over top of them, and they all turned into corrupted and attacked her. So she killed her entire warband and all the other Charr that were there. And rather than choose to find, to deal with being a Gladium and try to find a new warband, which is very difficult when you are a Gladium because nobody wants to take you in anyway. So you have to try to do it as fast as possible so that, you can get back into being accepted into society.
Right.
So she kind of went the other route and founded the Vigil instead.
Ah.
Because she realized that, warbands and everything are great, but you need a large-scale, full frontal assault type group if you want to take on the dragons. And it was this experience with her in Krokatoric that made her decide to do and found the Vigil. So I know we kind of touched on this a little bit last time, but there is a difference between a Gladium and a Charr that's just been sent on a solo mission. Because, a Gladium, they have no support, they have no family, and they don't really fit in the chain of command at all. A Charr that's assigned to perform like a solo mission, well, that's all it is. They still come back and join their warband when they come back, but, it's unacceptable to leave your warband for an extended period of time anyway, but if it's required in the line of duty, you have to do what you have to do. And that's just how it goes. So, a Legionnaire is a leader of a warband. So, we said the warband's kind of a family, and this would kind of be like the head of the household in a family situation.
Right.
So, warbands are typically 5 to 10 members. They can grow, up to 20, and if it gets too big, then the Legionnaire will then split the warband into 2 separate warbands, and the second warband will then choose a new Legionnaire and be their own their own separate functioning group. And a Legionnaire can assign one of the Charr in his warband to another warband. And this isn't necessary. It's not like a punitive thing, but it could be like, we just said we're on a new mission and, you can't help us with this because of some reason, or your talents are extremely suited to this need for this other warband's mission, so, we're going to send you over there. But typically the Charr's loyalties lie with their original warband, so that's why it's not really done very often, but it can be done. And like we said, how their naming convention involves part of their warband name. If you are assigned to a new warband, you have to change your name.
Yeah? Okay.
So, yeah.
This is mind-blowing. The amount of details that people are putting into the story. Like, no game has had that ever before. Not to my knowledge.
Yeah.
I mean, to go that much into detail, as in, okay, the Charr, they're like military, but here's what we're gonna do. We're actually have ranks, and in these ranks we're gonna have rules, and in these rules, it's crazy. And sorry if I interrupted you, but I mean, my mind is blown.
No, that's actually the last piece I have really on anything about their military system. I don't think there was much else. And I was looking, I don't really have anything else on like the faux fire, because I really don't want to spoil Ghosts of Ascalon, although there was one cool thing that I will say that doesn't spoil it, but there was the viewing hill outside of Ascalon City, which it's on the plains of Ashford, and it overlooks, Ascalon, and I think there were some Charr that were chained up there because they were captured by the Ascalonian forces when Adalbert and everyone was still alive, and they were, far off on the horizon, and I guess what happened was when Adalbert smashed Magdir or whatever happened and the faux fire happened, that him and his warband that were called they're called the Fire Shadows, they witnessed this, like they saw it. They were far enough away that it didn't kill them, but they could still witness it happen. And I just thought this was interesting. Their fur turned white from head to toe from watching it happen.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I just thought that was pretty cool, so I figured I'd mention it.
It is pretty cool.
And it's Fry Fireburn was the legionnaire of the warband, the Fire Shadow warband. You can look up more about him online, but
Hmm.
um, yeah. And then the only thing we wanted to talk about, but I don't really. Naveen had some stuff on this. We're talking about the technology, about the huge kind of jump in technology in 250 years from, bows and arrows and torches to airships and guns and all sorts of steampunk stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's more speculation than
Mm-hmm.
anything else because there's actually no details that I could find. And
Me either.
I mean, to our listeners, if you have any information, please do tell us because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't find anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how did that happen? Like, there's nothing much that's said. I mean, some people say that they followed the same path as us, the in real life humans.
Mm-hmm.
There's this industrial revolution that happened, the age of steampunk, as some would call it.
Mm-hmm.
And from Wiki, I took the information from Wiki because I am so horrible at history. Um, the Industrial Revolution was a period from 1750 to 1850. So that's 100 years, right? Guild
Mm-hmm.
Wars 1 to Guild Wars 2 is 250 years. So all those changes, because the Industrial Revolution were changes in agriculture, manufacturing, mining, transportation, technology, that had a profound effect on the social, economic, and cultural conditions of the times. And, basically, it's not really explained how the Charr became suddenly really smart and exceeded in the technology area, but I think it's safe to say that they almost followed the real world's path. Our
Mm-hmm.
industrial revolution, was about 100 years, and they're 250 years, so yeah, they have airships.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my conclusion, that's my theory, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, the only other thing I wanted to mention, kind of before we wrap it up, well, I got a couple things I want to mention before we get out of here,
Hmm.
is Dint had mentioned when we were talking about the Char episode that why didn't they just take the cauldron of Cataclysm and just re-steer us again?
Hmm.
Or why didn't we take the cauldron of Cataclysm and sear him right back? And I thought, and I know some other people thought, that maybe it was when they stopped worshiping the Titans, they just got rid of it. Or maybe it was like a one-off thing and it didn't work again anymore, the Cauldron of Cataclysm.
Right.
But I was reading, again, Ghosts of Ascalon, another reason why you should just take a, it's only, it's a quick read.
Yeah,
It's
300
like,
and some pages.
yeah, it's not even 400 pages, but I was reading this line, and it was when I think Dougal is reciting, the history of the Charr invading, and he's talking about this is when the Flame Legion Imperator is going to go take out King Adalbern. This is when they're assaulting. This is right before the foe fire,
Hmm.
and Dougal says the legions, led by the shamans of the Flame Legion, assaulted the walls of Ascalon City with their forces, their tame siege devourers, and their magical cauldrons. So I don't know if it's just any old magical cauldron, or if they had other cauldrons of Cataclysm, or it's the one. But that's just
Uh,
something interesting I found.
yeah.
So it's worth speculating. Let us know what you guys think. Do you think it was just something else, or do you think they had access to it? And if so, they probably. I don't think it was, because I think if they could have re-seared us, they would have done it every chance they got. But
Because, I mean, I haven't played Prophecies in so long. I mean, the pre-searing part.
hmm
But I do remember, and I think that's post-searing.
hmm
There's a mission where you have to. The bonus is to follow these chars that are holding a cauldron.
hmm
It's a magical cauldron, and they're going to the shamans where they're gonna like ignite this flame and stuff, and you just have to follow them. Um, I can't remember if this was the cauldron or just one of many.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'd have to play again.
Yeah.
Where's Carolina when you need her?
Next week, we'll
Yeah.
get the scoop.
Hey, that's true.
Yeah. So, unless you had anything else you want to talk Charr-wise about, Naveen, I think we can kind of bring this to a close.
Nope. I am good.
All right. Well, I just want to mention a handful of things. We are going to be recording our next episode next week on Monday, like we kind of I mentioned earlier when Naveen was out of the room. That we're gonna have Carolina on. We're gonna interview her. We're gonna talk some human lore. And like we said, we have our contest going on.
Hmm.
And I just wanted to mention that I want to shout out to everybody and all of the fans that like Chronicles of Tyria podcast and have watched and viewed it, because we're not even a 2-week-old podcast at this point, and we're already over 1,250 views on YouTube.
It's exciting.
Yeah, and we actually have 44 subscribers now. So we're planning on doing some sort of special something for when we hit 50 subscribers, and we'll probably do something like this, anytime we hit like a milestone of subscribers going forward.
Hmm.
But right now, we put it out to the community, and our consensus is right now is kind of like a get-together in Guild Wars 1, or maybe even Guild Wars 2 if it takes over a week to get there. But I doubt it. But, a meetup in Guild Wars 1, Chronicles of Tyria, we have a guild and a guild hall, so we figure we can send out guest invitations to everybody. And, kind of have big, or, we can pick Lion's Arch or someplace like that, an international district, and just have like a get together and like a party, and, we can chat with myself and Naveen and Dent and any of our other members. And if you're looking to get into role playing, we can, some of the people in there would love to, talk to you about it, or you're interested in getting into writing. Well, our writers will probably be there too.
Oh, most likely.
And I mean, depending on how things go, maybe we'll even do some in-game kind of giveaways for items, maybe even mini pets, some gold or whatever. Help you guys kind of get your Hall of Monuments going, or grind out those last few points that you're looking for. So if, get people to subscribe when we hit 50, be looking for a show. We'll probably do a 5-10 minute kind of an update show to let you guys know what's going on. And then, you can PM us or send it, in-game, or send us a message at hosts@chroniclesoftyria.com, or hit us up on the forums. And, then we can hopefully, before you know it, we'll hit 100 subscribers, and we'll have to come up with something new to do. But by then, maybe we'll be Guild Wars 2, and we'll have some fun stuff to do in there.
Yep, exactly. And so many things to do in Guild Wars 2.
Mm-hmm.
So much exploring to do in my part 2. Yay!
No, I know. So, alright, before we let this drag on for too long, I think it's about time we bring this to a close.
Yep.
So, for our Charr Redux minicast, I am Lagwyn.
And I'm Naveen.
And we will see you next time.